But I would do, I mean, but that's because I just am, that kind of bitch. I would do that. Come search my house. And when you find these guns, I have license, they're licensed or, whatever. But I would do that just to prove a point that, that this is so ridiculously stupid.
Well, see, do we have to point them out to them? Because I know my firearm is in a safe, and it is in a locked safe, and it is in a location where it's not readily accessible to small children. So,
right.
Do I have to be like, oh, getting warmer, there you go? Or if they can't find it, then it's not going to be an issue because I've made sure that I know where it is, but you're not going to be able to find it unless you really dig.
Like at my mom's house, there are actually guns in a case in the den, and I mean they're kind of prominently displayed. It's not like anyone can miss them, but there's not a bullet or ammunition to be found.
Excellent.
So they're just useless. I mean they're just sort of a decoration. So it's like I'm not exactly sure. Mm-hmm. Pretty much. I mean, at this point, if someone broke into the house, the only thing the gun would be good for is like a baseball bat type weapon.
Yeah, beat them with the gun.
Shoot.
Yeah,
exactly. I could beat them with the gun, but I could not actually fire the gun and shoot anyone. So
And then Democrats would still call that gun violence.
Of course
they would still call that gun violence.
Yeah,
because
I would make
that they have a record of turning.
Yes, I would make I would make the Everytown survey of, domestic violence with a gun.
Yep.
Because I beat an intruder or something with it. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, well, Beloit, 2 months from now, I will follow up on this story because I'll be very curious to see if anybody actually takes them up on this offer or if I get a response from the police chief. But there is one last and final topic that I wanted to talk about before we go off the air this evening, and that is a great column, and I'm going to shock my regular listeners, in Slate magazine by Emily Yoff, who also does the Dear Prudie column. And I put a link up in the chat room, and it's called The College Rape Overcorrection. And it is a rather lengthy piece, but trust me, it is worth the read because it is very well written, and she digs into some of these cases. And I'm going to take just a couple of seconds here and read sort of the three most pertinent paragraphs of the article. She begins, any woman who is raped on campus or off deserves a fair and thorough investigation of her claim, and those found guilty should be punished. But the new rules often put in place hastily and in response to the idea of a rape epidemic on campus, have left some young men saying they are the ones who have been victimized. They are starting to push back. In the past 3 years, men found responsible for sexual assault on campus have filed more than 36 cases against schools. They argue that their due process rights have been violated, and they say they have been victims of gender discrimination under Title IX. Their complaints are starting to cost universities. The higher education insurance group United Educators did a study of the 262 insurance claims it paid to students between 2006 and 2010 because of campus sexual assault, at a cost to the group of $36 million. The vast majority of payouts, 72%, went to the accused, young men who protested their treatment by universities. Assertions of injustice by young men are infuriating to some. Caroline Heldman, an associate professor of politics at Occidental College and co-founder of End Rape on Campus, said of the men who are turning to the courts, these lawsuits, and this is a quote, these lawsuits are an incredible display of entitlement, the same entitlement that drove them to rape. Senator Claire McCaskill, a Democrat from Missouri, a co-sponsor of the CASA bill, said to the Washington Post of these suits, quote, I don't think we are anywhere near a tipping point where the people accused of this are somehow being treated unfairly. And this is back to the author, I've read through the court filings and investigative reports of a number of cases, and it's clear to me that many of the accused are indeed being treated unfairly. Government officials and campus administrators are attempting to legislate the bedroom behavior of students with rules and requirements that would be comic if their effects weren't frequently so tragic. The legal filings in the cases brought by young men accused of sexual violence often begin like a script for a college sex farce, but end with the protagonist finding himself in a Soviet-style show trial, or, as in the case of Drew Sterrett, punished with no trial at all. And Drew Sterrett is the young man she mentioned at the beginning of the article who says he has consensual sex with a friend. And a while later, the friend's mother finds her writings and goes to campus, and he's brought up on charges of sexual assault. And he's not allowed to talk to people who could defend him, corroborate his story, any of that. And this has been going on, and it's been in the news quite a bit lately because Rolling Stone published that article about rape at the University of Virginia at Arlington. And before we went on air, Taylor and I were talking about it, and the story is falling apart at the seams. And it was championed as proof that, campuses have a sexual assault problem, a rape culture, quote unquote, and it's propagated by things like fraternities, which are, to use the feminist favorite term, part of the patriarchy. And we see that story falling apart at the seams, and now we've got here another story of a young man who was accused of sexual assault who did nothing wrong. Off the top of my head, if you look up the story of a Brian Banks, he was accused of rape and actually ended up going to jail because of the accusations, and the accuser eventually came out and said she made everything up, but his life was ruined. I believe he lost scholarship opportunities. I'm pretty sure his mom had to sell her house to pay for his legal defenses. So we only have a few minutes left, about 3 or 4, so I'm going to throw this open to Sean and Heather for your comments on this college rape campus story.
I have 2 quick points. First point I thought was funny in the article was that right there in the beginning of the second paragraph, where I think it's called overcorrection, the first thing it says is that one of the most dangerous places for a young woman today is a college campus. And I believe that's something the Democrats have been caught saying repeatedly. And it's like, if that's true, then why are we falling over ourselves to make it a gun-free zone, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me in the first place. But my other quick point is that I think that we're going about this all wrong. That if you put a different context, like if Heather and I worked together and we had a coworker that got raped at work, you wouldn't be like, oh, we'll go to HR about it. You'd be like, call the cops, go to the police and have the police investigate it. And don't go to the campus newspaper and have them write an article about it. Go to the cops. Or I'm sorry, don't go to the the newspaper at the company that writes memos and write a memo about it.
Well, I think
you go to the proper authorities. They have the victim services people. They have better investigators than that are more experienced and more educated than whatever schmuck the university has, that does that sort of thing. I mean, if it's actually a serious epidemic, treat it like one and leave it in the hands of police, and then the school should do nothing until the claims are either substantiated or, it's basically thrown out as no, there's nothing here, there's no evidence. And then, if there's evidence, if something happened, then the police can follow, the campus can follow suit with the police and say, okay, fine, this guy's screwed, he's kicked out. But like this guy in the article, he still hasn't gotten his degree, and it was about consensual sex where the girl just climbed in his bed, and there were even people there that were like, yeah, it was consensual, and she regretted it later. His roommate she regretted it later, so now he can't get his degree, and he's screwed. Yeah.
Heather, you got about a minute, so what do you want to say?
My biggest issue with the UVA claim is one, she says she went to the college and they did nothing. Her dad has said that she was in fact raped. I do not understand how a woman could be gang raped by 7 men on a bed of broken glass and be so casual about it. I mean, if this happened to my daughter and she went to the university and they did nothing, I would be screaming from the rooftops. It would not take 2 years and a Rolling Stone article to get this out into the public. I simply do not understand, the idea that this is a rampant epidemic on college campuses, and yet it takes a Rolling Stone article 2 years after the fact to make this known. It's exactly. Mind-boggling.
Okay, Heather, where can we find you online?
I'm H. Bulware. Twitter. That's it. Just Twitter.
Just Twitter. But follow her if you aren't already. Sean, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Fopow, like MRFOPOW. And my show, Real Deal Talk Radio, will possibly be making a comeback very, very soon. We'll have to wait for an announcement on that.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for being on. Taylor, where can we find you?
Taylor.
Well, Taylor's at
EYE Desert Blog. That's at EYE Desert Blog. Helps if I have my mic on. And,
yes, it does.
We will. We'll talk. We'll talk soon about that.
Excellent. Well, thank you for listening to the Modern Comments Radio Show. Stick around for The Right War with Liz and Taylor.
Ruth
coming
Hodge,
up.
The guest, Miss Ruth.
Excellent.
Woo!
So stick around for that, coming up right after this program, and we will catch you next week here on Vigilant Liberty Radio with the Modern Comments Radio Show.
Talk soon, guys.
Have a good night, everybody.
This show is copyright by VLR Media. All opinions of hosts, panelists, and guests are their own and may not reflect the opinion of VLR Media or anyone else.